Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. More Supreme Court fun, more fun from the six in the dresses. It's kind of like deja vu all over. I'm starting to feel like a kid again. Starting to think like a kid again. I'm going to have to start checking the nightly news to see how bad the smog index is going to be. Worried about how bad the environment's going to be. Going to start worrying about asthma and choking and all that stuff, evidently, because our Supreme Court came down on the side of the polluters. And, well, sorry, folks, we're not going to be able to regulate and do anything to address climate change. The geniuses on our court have decided, no. The smart people that you put in charge of the EPA, the people who spend their careers focusing on that stuff, no, they're not the ones who should be regulating. No, let corporate America decide. They know. And I spent time today going, I grew up in the home of the Clean Water and Clean Air Act. I grew up in Cleveland. A lot of people like to remind me, yes, isn't that where the Cuyahoga River caught on fire? Yeah, I was just born when that happened the last time. That was 55 years ago that happened. Yeah, stop bringing it up. And I've always pushed back on that. I've always that was 55 years ago. Get over it. I'm now going, you know what? Maybe I was wrong all those years pushing back. Maybe I should have said yes, it is where that happened X amount of years ago. And if you continue to vote for people who side with corporate America and side with the polluters, it's going to happen again. Who would have known? Who would have known that, maybe in my lifetime, the Cuyahoga River could catch on fire again? Other than the fact that, we don't manufacture anything anymore. So I guess there's that to be okay with. I guess there is that. Now, what the court decide? Well, they decided that the Obama era plan that never went into place, that was stopped and that was never going to go into place, can never go into place, and even further, can never ever go into place. And the headline that grabbed my attention is Biden agenda thwarted. Going, but this wasn't Biden's agenda. This was Obama's era, clean power plan that never got off the ground. And Biden actually said, we're not moving forward on. And the win for conservatives, where you say, see, we stuck it to Obama, because you libtards are going to cry over this. And you go, no, you're just harming the environment. Look, I don't think climate change cares who you voted for in the last election. I don't think the wildfires that we're seeing really care much who's home. I don't think the fires, when they roar through an area, go, hey, did you vote the right way in the last election? I don't think they do that. I think they just and over goes your house. I could be wrong. There may be somebody up in the sky checking, tallies and checking voter registrations. But I gotta think the wildfires, the extreme weather, not really caring who you voted for. Maybe it should though, because all that stuff's going to get worse. At least that's what the smart people are saying. The smart people who we are now locking in the closet, because no, we can no longer regulate. And the bigger picture in this is, and this is where working people should really be concerned. You go, well, this is just the EPA being restrained. They're out of control with their clean water and their clean air. It goes even further, I think, than this. It goes to the ability of we, the people, to regulate the moneyed interest. And this is where my focus has been for a very long time. These fights have always been put in terms of pitting the right versus the left, Democrats versus Republicans, red states, blue states, buy the hat, don't buy the hat. This back and forth, when the reality really is it's top down. It's those of us on the bottom, those of us who have to grow up, as I did, in a poor community next to an airport where the planes were dumping on us and the factories were spewing and the air quality was horrible. The water, Lake Erie, sadly, when I was a kid, was inhospitable not just to swimmers and people who wanted to have fun, but to fish. Because the only fish I remember seeing in Lake Erie were floating sideways with one eye looking up at the sky. For those who don't know, though, they were dead. That's how they float sideways. That's what I remember. And a murky kind of mucky brown. And you go back now and it's a vibrant ecosystem of life and people using it, boaters and swimmers, and it's wow, they did amazing what smart policy can do. It's quite remarkable, actually. And now we have the six in the robes who clearly know better. Our climatologists on the Supreme Court clearly now know better, because they're going to restrain the ability to really do anything about this in the future. And you go, well, there was nuance. No, what this is really about, this is ideological. This is about restraining government's ability to regulate. Understand what the conservative movement is about. It's about dragging government into the bathtub and drowning it in the bathtub. That's what it's about. It's about your ability and my ability to hold the powers to be accountable. That's the big picture here. Dwindling this down to its lowest common denominator, where the rubber meets the road for you and me. Do we, the people, have the ability, the right, the power to ensure that our air is clean, that our water is clean, that our environment's clean, that the food that we eat is safe, that the products that we use are safe? Do we have that right? Do we have the right through our government to ensure that the things that we expect, and this is very dangerous precedence here. This is scary times, but this is what conservatives say they want. They want, the Wild West. And I don't think they quite know what they're getting in this. Now, again, they say, well, corporate America, they'll police themselves because they'll act in their best interests because they don't want to get sued, right? Isn't that the answer? They'll do the right thing because some of those trial lawyers, those evil leftist trial lawyers, they'll hold them accountable. Except when you have a court system that's as rigged as ours is, good luck if you're the one who's been harmed. Oh, by the way, you're probably dead, so good luck getting justice then. This is my problem with these kind of decisions. And we knew it was coming. We've been talking about this for a very long time. You knew this court was going to go there. And look, they're taking us back to the good old days. The good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s. This is the move of conservatism to take us back to the Gilded Age, back to the age when the wealthy and the powerful controlled everything and the rest of us were desperate and obviously pitted against each other. And I would argue we're already here. We're just fighting over what little scraps are left. So for me, this is another one of those moments where time to do something. Will we? I don't know. Still outraged about the Roe decision being overturned. I still outraged about that. Will this fly under that radar? I think it will. But I think this is as dangerous because, well, this is humanity. This is everybody. And you go, but Rick, the women, yeah, the women. I'm with them. I'm 100%. I'm on the page. We should be doing absolutely. But this decision, I think, is deadly as well, because this is humanity. Our ability to regulate the polluters and hold people accountable. This is scary stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425 if you want to weigh in. Also, the president came out and said that he would be in favor of a carve-out to the filibuster to codify the abortion rights in the law. Again, I'm not a legal scholar, but I kind of have a question. Let's say we do pass a law that says, yay, abortion is now the law of the land. Doesn't the Supreme Court just rule that unconstitutional? just kind of a thought, just kind of throwing that out there, especially if you have 50 50 plus one. Just kind of throwing that out there. Now, look, I'm in favor of getting this done, getting something done, moving in a direction that all the horrible that I see coming in the days, weeks, and months don't actually happen. We need to do something without question. But this is the push of the day. Will it happen? No. No filibuster reform. No changing that. I have always been someone who says the filibuster should be difficult. Not impossible. The filibuster should be difficult. You should have to stand there, hold your water, speak your words, even if they're the best words. But you should have to hold the floor. You should have to at least entertain. Read the phone book, Mickey Mouse, that book you claim to love so much. Read the Bible. Hey, everybody should hear it anyway. Something. You shouldn't just be able to sit in your office and go, no, I filibuster. And then we don't get to know who filibustered. This should be a much more public, much more performative display. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Let's go to the phones. Alice on line one. Alice, how are you?
I am okay, and how are you?
I am frustrated. I am angry. I'm I'm looking at the six in robes going, predictable, still angering.
I know. Well, and I'm going to get sarcastic here. Well, Jesus is just going to come get everybody. Now, I am quoting, by the way, the local evangelical Trumper. Jesus is going to come down, and he is going to save everybody. So we're not going to have to worry about that, and he is going to just renew the world after all the sinners get killed.
After they get killed. I was going to say, hold on, there's a part of that story you're missing. Because when Jesus returns, I'm told he's coming back, and it's not going to be pretty. He's coming back. He's going to be Rambo Jesus with a sword and an AR-15, and he's going to wipe out the heathens.
Yeah, but, hey, I don't think they know the whole story either. But let me continue on, because I'm just sitting there looking, going, have you even read the book? Are you an idiot? But here's the rest of their version, okay? And we have nothing to worry about because, all them billionaires and the Republicans are trying to take us to space to find out other planets. Because there ain't nobody else on any of them planets out there. All that alien nonsense, well, that's just make-believe. So you got nothing to worry about.
You should move.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So, Rick, don't worry about it. Either Jesus is coming or we're going to all go to another planet.
Yeah, we're not going to another planet.
Yeah. Well, I said, and it started a bit of I got sarcastic, and I said, here's the thing. What if there is alien life out there and Jesus likes them better? What are we going to do then?
Ouch. Ouch. You just hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah, I did. But, hey, it happens.
There you go.
So anyways, have a good evening.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. Look, we're not going to another planet. I still say the whole space exploration thing is figuring out which one of those billionaires are going to be able to get the resources, the minerals back here so they can be the first trillionaire. It's about figuring out how to get all that stuff off those asteroids and those other places so they can mine and rape and pillage up there. And then profit back here. There's no living, at least not the way we think of living on another planet, at least not in our lifetimes. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you want to weigh in, you got thoughts, questions, comments, something on today's decisions by these six in the robes, love to hear it. Quick break, right back. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a Teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you thought this term was fun, oh, just wait. It's going to get better. Look, it's going to be better. The robed ones are taking cases they've turned some down, but taking cases that are going to be really troublesome in the future. But one they turned down was about evidently there was a case coming out of New York about the vaccine mandates. Religious people very unhappy because there's no religious exemption. Clarence Thomas, in his dissent, wrote that the people that were bringing this, they object on religious grounds to all available COVID-19 vaccines because they were developed using cell lines derived from aborted children. Now, here's the reality. No, they weren't. There are no aborted children in the vaccines. They're not. It's not there. It didn't happen. But these folks, the believers believe they do, and now they're going to go through hoops, all this mental gymnastics to make it okay for Clarence Thomas, a Supreme Court justice, to spew nonsense and misinformation by saying, well, he was just saying, what the believers believe. He doesn't actually believe this. He was just reciting, what those people believe. Well, they're wrong. And why can't we say, no, they're wrong? The reason we're not taking this is they're freaking wrong. What happened to, you're just stupid. Stop. No. Much bigger than this. Thomas wanted to take this because, again, it's all about this belief that the far right is somehow being persecuted because they don't get to impose their narrow-minded views on the rest of us. Somehow that's bad for them. And look, believe what you want. Do what you want. Follow your path. Lead your best life. As long as your beliefs, your twisted mindset doesn't affect me, we're good. As my grandfather said, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. Simple, easy. It's one of the things I lead my life by. You want to go do something, God bless you, or whoever you follow, bless you. Good on you. But because I won't do it too, doesn't mean that somehow you're being persecuted. Except, then they go, well, if we don't do it and you do, then we're against it and you shouldn't be able to do it either, which again comes back to, well, the whole same-sex marriage thing, the whole same-sex thing, which, again, you don't have to do it. My position on gay marriage from the very beginning was always very simple. If you're against it, don't do it. That was pretty simple, wasn't it? Pretty simple. If someone came up to me, if a guy came up and said, hey, I like you, I'd like to marry you, I'd go, oh, thank you, I appreciate that. No, I'm good, though. But hey, I appreciate it. Next, good luck. Which brings me to Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, who's now saying, because remember what the right's telling us. Roe is the end. Overturning Roe, that we've righted a wrong. We're not going to go after same-sex marriage. We're not going to go after, contraception. We're not going to go after all of the other stuff. We're not going to undo the 20th century. Cross our heart and cross our fingers behind our back. We're not going to do it. No, trust us. Trust us. Trust us. Not going to do it. Except Ken Paxton says, well, he's willing and able to bring back, a ban on on same-sex relations. Going back and undoing, I believe it was the Lawrence decision, which, you stop me to think about it, it was only, 2003? And that was a 6-3 decision back then. Think about this. It was a 6-3 decision saying that, you know what, mind your own damn business, states, like Kansas and Texas. What consenting adults do within the confines of their own four walls, their business. Their business. You mind yours, they'll mind theirs. The three dissenting folk, Clarence Thomas being one of them. The other two being Scalia and William Rehnquist. That's how far to the extreme this Supreme Court has gone. So you think, well, gee, if Lawrence is on the table, we're going to go back to sodomy laws, and we're going to go back to locking people up for what they do in the privacy of their homes. What's next? I mean, Griswold is not far. That gave, married couples the ability to get contraception, a very highly private thing. And then Stanley, what was it? I think it was Stanley and Eisenstadt, I think, were the cases that ended up expanding Griswold to unmarried couples. That stuff's on the table. Oh, that means you, straight people. That's just not the gays. As I've said, everyone's in the Shark Tank. Everyone's in the conservative Shark Tank. And when their bad intentions, when their ideology gets a taste, you're going to be next. That's how bad these things are. Now, one of the things they did take, this case out of North Carolina, that is going to shift the power to decide what happens in elections from state courts to legislatures. Stop and think about what just happened in this country. Stop and think about if state legislatures had the power to overturn a presidential election. Stop and think about the states that might, I don't know, have decided they were going to change their electors. Stop and think about, how many Republican states might just go, we didn't like the way that election turned out. We're going to take it to the legislature because we've gerrymandered the state to where we control the state house. Stop and think about where this could take us. But they're going to hear this case over the maps there in North Carolina and the Supreme Court shooting them down as being heavily gerrymandered. And this again is another step towards taking your and my power away and putting it into the hands of a few. This isn't about more democracy. This is about less. This is about power and control in the hands of a few, not more. This is scary, dangerous stuff. So when I say possibly the last free election we're going to have in my lifetime, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm preparing. Because this could be it. Because this case for 2024 could be the decider. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program or you're just joining us, podcast. Never miss an episode. Subscribe, like, share, all of that stuff. Gonna take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1928. That was the day the state of Alabama outlawed the convict lease system that had been in practice for decades. Slave masters throughout the South had routinely loaned out enslaved people before slavery was finally abolished. The convict lease system continued this practice as the South worked to rebuild in a rush of rapid industrial growth after the Civil War. African Americans found themselves increasingly subject to sweeps by local and state authorities days that coincided with harvest time or when labor agents arrived looking to man the coal mines. Many were convicted on trumped-up charges and shipped off to prison. Once there, they were leased to private industries and dispatched mostly to coal mines near Birmingham. By 1890, the state profited $164,000 a year. By 1912, prison mining brought in over $1 million in state revenues. In the PBS documentary, Slavery by Another Name, Douglas Blackman and other scholars note that prisoners could be driven in a way that earlier enslaved workers and free labor could not. Convict labor served to depress wages, curtail union activity, organizing, and strikes. These workers could also be worked practically to death and easily replaced. Progressive reformers, Socialist Party leaders, and United Mine Workers District 20 would wage an unrelenting war against the convict lease system for years. Even the 1911 Banner Mine explosion that killed 123 African-American prisoners couldn't outlaw the practice. Finally, newly elected Governor Bibb Graves yielded to the public outcry that condemned the practice as a relic of barbarism. He also ceded to workers' demands for jobs. Graves subsequently put prisoners to work on chain gangs building roads throughout the state, making Alabama the last state to abolish the convict lease system.
Too many big business CEOs turn out to be grifters, ripping off consumers, workers, and others. But the corporate con artists I consider most vile are those who profiteer on people's health care needs. We've had such infamous high-profile scammers as Medicare fraudster Rick Scott, Big Pharma price gouger Martin Shkreli, and the Sackler family of opioid pushers. Worse, though, we now face an industry-wide epidemic of insurers, hospitals, and others that are pushing higher costs onto patients, then systematically pushing those who can't pay the full inflated tab into debt schemes. With bloated interest charges, payments go on for years, and medical bankruptcies are soaring. The most significant statistic in today's avaricious world of healthcare finance is this: half of U.S. adults don't have the money to cover a $500 medical bill. Thus, as the system keeps jacking up its prices and profits, millions of families are forced by illness or injury into the dark valley of debt, inhabited by ruthless debt collectors employed by the medical establishment. But wait, you say, I have health insurance. Still, ever-increasing prices and out-of-pocket insurance requirements put you into debt, too. A recent Kaiser Family Foundation survey found that 6 out of 10 working-class adults with health coverage went into medical debt in the past 5 years. Most perversely, healthcare debt prevents many people from getting health care. 1 in 7 Americans say the corporate system has refused care to them because they have unpaid medical bills, and 2/3 say they've put off care because of the fear of crushing debt. As one expert puts it, the number one reason and the number 2 and 3 and 4 reasons that people go into medical debt is that they don't have the money. It's not complicated. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help stop healthcare industry's profiteers, go to ripmedicaldebt.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I think one of my favorite stories today. Evidently, this is evidently the former guy's staff used to play the song "Memory" from the Broadway musical Cats to soothe the Donald whenever he felt a little stressed. So I'm guessing whenever he threw his hamburger against the wall and there was ketchup dripping down the wall, and then it would be the memory song. Now, I don't think I've ever heard it, so I can't sing it for you. I saw Cats one time on Broadway, and I walked away from it going, the only time I've ever seen a cat do a somersault is someone kicked it. And it just didn't make any sense to me, but the song evidently just soothed the beast. Maybe if they were playing that in the car when he was trying to strangle the Secret Service agent, maybe that'd have been better. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on our top stories of the day and all the fun and excitement and, well, the hilarity. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
I would sing the song, but I'm scared that we'd get slapped with like a copyright from Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yeah, right. I mean, the litigious society we live in. But yeah, are you surprised that they came up with to soothe the beast? They played a cat song. I yeah, I would have thought something. I don't know. I thought something else.
Yeah, I would have thought like some Barbara Streisand or something, but I don't know. He's maybe like, I have a friend who has these like super hyperactive dogs, and she has these essential oils she rubs on the dog's ears. So maybe we could like just grab his ears and rub on him a little bit. See if that works. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
But
no.
apparently, so Michael Cohen today said he's actually never seen Donald Trump throw ketchup anywhere. But he has seen him throw like papers in a newspaper and magazines and stuff like that. So my favorite meme of this whole thing was I saw there was a glass plate, and it said, I guess this is what Trump meant when he said he was going to be tough on China. I've been giggling about that for like 2 days. I was like, oh, that's so good.
That's brilliant.
So good.
No, it's not surprising to me. Look, I mean, you get frustrated, you throw things. I mean, he's one of the. I see him as one of those people who it does not surprise me in the slightest, not at all. Especially because he's not going to be the one cleaning it up. So I see him going into a room, causing a mess, and having working people have to get on their hands and knees and scrub up his mess. I absolutely, there's no way I don't see that as possible.
I was really worried because the first thing I thought was, oh crap, I hope this wasn't like some really fancy, historic China from some administration, or like some, like I hope this wasn't in the fancy dining room, or, it was like, my immediate reaction was, oh God, please let the White House be okay.
Yeah, it wasn't the stuff Dolly Madison ran away with, right?
Right, like the movie White House Down. Every time the tour guide is like trying to protect all of the antiques in the White House, and then they blow up the piano, and you're just like, no, not the piano. So yeah, that's my whole reaction from the Trump administration was like, oh please God, don't let them hit the kill the historic stuff.
Yeah, don't destroy the stuff. Don't draw mustaches on the pictures. That they're probably all knockoffs. You probably took the other stuff anyway. But big story today. Court, robes. The 6 climatologists we now got on the Supreme Court. This is a big deal. This West Virginia thing. Think being able to regulate climate change, do anything to help the planet. Think that matters?
I kind of feel like everybody should just take a nice deep breath, because it may be the last clean one we get. That's what I'm a little worried about. This was something that I was a little bit worried about in terms of, this is removing regulations, the executive branch's ability to regulate the environment. So I feel like it basically just destroys the EPA. I always felt like the 3 branches of government were equal, but apparently if the Congress doesn't like dictate in the, any act that creates the EPA that, you have to specifically clean this type of pollution from this type of company. That's what the court has decided, is that it has to be really specific for it to be enforced, which I think is just complete BS.
No, but again, the court is this court is going to show what activist judges really are all about.
Yeah, so buy your HEPA filters now. Get a couple, one in each room.
Yeah, I hope we're going to need more than that. Now let's talk about the overturning of Roe. There's a congressman from Tennessee that you wrote a story about, because I've been alluding to him all week. Because hey, you got your mistresses and they need their abortions and all that stuff. Where's he been? Where? It's kind of like an episode of where are they now? So where is he now?
So this guy was somehow elected in 2012. And ever since then, every person who has run against him has been like, okay, not only is he claiming that he has been anti-choice, but his wife got 2 abortions, and then he had a mistress who he told had to go to Georgia to get an abortion. So really what he's saying is he's he's anti-choice except for all of his people that he doesn't want to have kids with. And so he hasn't said anything for like over a week. Nobody really knows where he is. His office hasn't put out a statement or anything. No pictures.
Yeah, I always butcher his name, so I don't usually jump in.
Too. It's like It's like I want to pronounce it like James Harden, but that's not it. D Hardinas.
It's something like that.
That's how it's spelled. No beard, so.
Yeah, and bald.
Yeah. and white also. Like, he looks nothing like James Harden. It's just the name.
So why'd you have to bring forward James Harden?
But yeah,
James Harden didn't have an abortion.
I know. It's the name. And I don't fear the beard. I still love the beard, even though he doesn't play for the Thunder anymore. And he hasn't for like a decade. But anyway, sorry. NBA.
Yeah. So are you relieved, as I kind of am at this point, that the Supreme Court is kind of taking a break so that we can at least take one of our last clean breaths for a while, in knowing that the horrible is stopped for now. I mean, it's been bad. It's been really bad. But it's going to get worse because, well, we've got some pretty ugly on the future. Are you at least like I am going, well, we got a lot of mess to clean up, but at least for now it's stopped?
At least for now it's stopped, and the only thing that I can hope is that maybe Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to come into the court and just completely destroy them whenever it comes to the arguments. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if they have any shame anymore, but I feel like she is so whip smart that there could be an argument in front of the court where she's asking leading questions to, to the crazy people that are bringing this case, and maybe it will ultimately make the judges look stupid in their decisions. But I don't know. That's my fantasy. That's what I just keep thinking about, that and real estate in like Costa Rica. And
yeah. So is this a moment where we go, the court has so badly jumped the shark that maybe now we have to put it on TV, that now we need a SCOTUS, we need a C-SPAN for SCOTUS, that it's so bad that now you've got to have these moments where we're going to turn the Supreme, because I would argue Clarence Thomas is already the Lauren Boebert of the Supreme Court. I would argue that he's already wants to be a reality TV star. He already wants the attention. I would argue Alito kind of in that world as well. Are we at that moment where finally, hey, we're just going to open the court. We're going to put it on TV so people can see these arguments and maybe make opinions and thoughts for themselves instead of having it behind closed doors?
We got to figure out how to do that. I mean, I think it would be awesome. I don't know how we mandate that. I don't know how we say, because the first thing that's going to happen is the court's just going to like pitch a total fit. But gosh, I don't know. I feel like it was a lot easier whenever they were on Zoom all the time, because then at least somebody could do a screen cap of it. And now it's just so rare that we're even able to hear. Like, you can't even have people at the Supreme Court to hear the decisions because everything's blocked off, and we've got a giant fence around it right now. And
and look, as we now have to protect them from their horrible decisions, it's only going to get worse because they're going to get further behind a shield to where they're going to be further away from the repercussions of their actions, which is going to insulate them even further from any possible accountability, because, hey, they're there for life. There's no accountability. There's no throwing them out. I know people say, no, we're going to impeach them. Yeah. Good luck on that.
Yeah. The thing that is sad is that people like Kavanaugh live in states like Maryland where he benefits from Democratic policies. So, the air is nice in Maryland, in Chevy Chase, Maryland. I don't think anybody can go and dump a whole barrel of oil on his yard. if his daughter needs an abortion, she's going to be able to get it. So, I feel like if you're going to enact these crazy right-wing policies, at least you should be forced to live in a right-wing state.
Okay. So who the barrel of oil, who's going to pay for that? Because that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it may actually, one of my mother's many husbands, cheated on her. And so she took a deal of Roundup and wrote slut in the woman's yard. I have always heard salt is better because you'll never be able to grow anything there ever again. But my mom used Roundup, and I really respected her for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. So maybe there's an idea you just put into somebody's head. You listen to the Rick Smith
Please
show.
don't break any laws. I'm just going to say, please don't break any laws. But, and don't put salt on anybody's yard ever unless, they're a husband cheating, I guess. There
you go. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Sarah Burris. She's a reporter at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. You're just talking about some minor criming, some minor vandalism, writing in people's lawns with Roundup. I don't suggest it. Please don't write to me and say that I got into trouble because you told me to do it. I'm not advocating for that. Thanks, Sarah. You're going to get us in trouble. Going to get the FBI coming after us saying, you said to go get Kevin Oz and put... Not good stuff. I want to get your thoughts on the post Roe era. I had someone the other day go, what's interesting is how quickly Republicans pivoted from how they cared about, the life of the mother and rape and incest, and how now they're going, just extreme. And I look at the governor of the guy who's running for governor in my state, Benito Mastriano, who's, far out on the fringe, under no circumstances, nothing. I look at the Speaker of the House in Mississippi, this Philip Gunn, who evidently was asked by a reporter the question, so a 12-year-old molested by her father and uncle carry the pregnancy to term, and he said, that's my belief. I believe life begins at conception. He would have he would force that 12-year-old to give birth because, hey, that's what he believes. It's what he believes.
What I want to know is how many rape babies is he going to adopt? That's the question that I think every reporter needs to be asking these Republicans. How many rape babies do you plan to adopt? Because there's going to be a lot of them in your state. There's going to be even more if you decide that life begins at conception and all of a sudden, women can't have IUDs and a slate of other things.
Well, even worse, Sarah, my thought goes like this, and this is where it's kind of even scarier still. Now that you're not marking out the rape and incest part as potential, women who are raped or are criminalized, victimized by incest, they're not going to report it because they're not going to be able to get access to what limited options they're going to have, which means I believe that rape and incest will actually go up while the reporting will go down. And these Republican states will go, see what we done did? We made rape and incest go away.
And that's basically what Greg Abbott has said in Texas. What makes me completely insane is that the state of Texas is the second largest state in population. And yet, I think there are like 10 million fewer people that live in Texas than California. Yet they have more rapes in the state of Texas than the state of California, which has 10 million more people in it. And so my question is, why is there a rape epidemic in Texas? Like, what is so wrong with you and your state that you can't even handle being around women there? So much less, they're not even going to let women have Plan B or something like that anymore. That's what's actually happening in Kansas City. A whole slate of hospitals in Kansas City, Missouri isn't giving Plan B to rape survivors anymore. So when they come into the hospital and they get a full rape kit, you get a Plan B along with it, which is just emergency contraception, not an abortion. It's not an abortion pill, contrary to what any crazy right-winger seems to think. And So there are women now who are who have no option whenever they're sexually assaulted in the state of Missouri, and it's happening. It's already happening whenever it comes to contraception, and that's what Clarence Thomas said in his decision, is that, yes, he's starting with Roe, but he wants to get rid of Griswold v. Connecticut, which basically said that no government has any room in a couple's bedroom, and people can get whatever the heck kind of birth control they want to use. It's going to be Lawrence versus Texas, which was the law that said that, people can have whatever the heck sex they want to have, including sodomy. It's going to be Oberfeld, which is gay marriage. And I feel like we've been sort of sounding the alarm about Roe for a really long time, and nobody really believes us.
Yep.
And now we're sounding the alarm about all the others, and nobody really believes us.
No, it's going to happen. I believe that's going to happen, and maybe there's part of me that goes, maybe it has to. Maybe you got to go back to square one and fight the fight all over again, because that's the only way I think we learn. Maybe I don't know. When do the pitchforks come out, or do they?
That's the thing that I think is interesting. I was looking at a couple of different races, pulling in some other races in some of the Senate races that are going to be really close. The Walker and Warnock race, Walker is now down by 10 points.
Yeah.
That's 2 weeks ago. We saw they were dead even. And granted, Warnock had not been actually running against him, running, ads and stuff. But in 2 weeks, the dude lost 10 points. That's huge.
Yeah, well, people started paying attention to the dumb stuff he's been saying. I'm an FBI agent.
I mean, I hope that happens in Nevada, because one of the cases, or one of the stories I wrote today, was about the Attorney General of Nevada, who was caught on tape telling pastors that he's going to try and get rid of abortion in Nevada, which is a freedom state right now. It's a free state. Women have freedom there. And so I want to say it's like 26% of people oppose all abortions across the board in Nevada. It's a very small number. So good luck with that, dude.
Yeah, well, the important thing is make sure that people know that. But Sarah, I appreciate the time as always. Yeah. Good stuff. Hope people check out the reporting. You do great work over there at Raw Story. Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story. Thanks so much, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
As always, good stuff. Going to take a quick break. Right back here after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1885. That was the day that streetcar workers went out on strike. The West Division Street Railroad Company had reduced the number of trips it made each day. The workers asked for a wage increase to make up for the loss of earnings. In response, management fired 15 union leaders. Outraged members of the city's labor movement rallied to the cause of the West Side Streetcarmen's Benevolent Association. Thousands of Chicagoans lined the company's tracks. Calls went out to revoke the company's charter. Mayor Harrison urged the company not to try and run their cars in the charged environment. But the company's management refused to listen. They demanded police protection to get their streetcars running. A police captain by the name of John Bonfield was assigned the task. Bristling with policemen, 10 streetcars rolled out into the crowd. Under Bonfield's orders, the police clubbed strikers and protesters along the tracks. When a group of bricklayers yelled "rats" at the passing cars, they were arrested. In all, 150 protesters went to jail that day. After 7 days, the strike ended in a compromise. The workers saw an increase in their wages, and all but 2 of the workers who had been fired got their jobs back. The action propelled Captain Bonfield's career as a strikebreaker. He became known as Captain Blackjack Bonfield. It was Captain Bonfield who led the police confrontation with workers at a rally the next year that sparked the Haymarket tragedy. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So the research firm Accountable.us has put out some interesting little numbers. They point out that General Mills, the cereal company, big food conglomerate, they in the past year have raised their prices 5 times in the last year. 5 times. They point out from the earning data that they've put out, General Mills has shown how they've used that price inflation and how well it's paid off for them. Fourth quarter profits skyrocketed 97% to $823 million. For fiscal year 2022, the company's profits are up 16% to $2.2 billion. And what have they done with that money, you ask? Did they invest in new plants? Did they pay their workers more? Did they hire more? Did they build new facilities to meet new demands? Did they anything? New products? No. They handed about $2 billion of that out to shareholders, and they boosted their buyback program by 191%. Yeah, so what they're doing is they're taking money out of your pocket because they raised prices 5 times, and they're putting it into theirs. That's right. Massive redistribution of wealth from the working class to the investor class. And are you surprised? But it's Joe Biden's fault, Rick. Joe Biden raised the price of cereal 5 times. Joe Biden did that. Switch in the White House. Of course, it's right there. It's right next to the button that presses the bomb. It's the nuclear economy button right there. It's the inflation button. Yeah, that's what it is. They also point out that Hormel Foods, they raised their prices not once but twice, evidently, in 2021. They've shown 5 consecutive record net sale profit quarters. Good for them, I guess. $132 million in the first quarter they handed out in shareholder dividends. They're doing so well that they bought up $3.35 billion acquisition. I'll get it. Of Kraft's Heinz Planters peanuts, the largest acquisition in the company's history. Yay, good for them. They're expanding, monopolizing, and controlling the market. Good for them, because you know what they can do then? That's right, they can raise their prices and make more profit. Yes! That is the capitalistic American way. Also, Mondelez. They own the Oreo, the Wheat Thins, the Ritz crackers, the Triscuits, those things. Their profits grew, $800 million in 2021. Increase up 7% in January. They did a $4 billion stock buyback and dividends in 2021. Hey, good for them. Again, enriching themselves. And also Kroger. You may remember Kroger, the largest food supermarket chain in the country. Remember how they were crying poverty a little bit? They were going to have to pass, price increases along to consumers. Well, they're now in a position of strength. They reported a third quarter operating profit of $868 million and spent almost $300 million of that on quarterly stock buybacks. Because, hey, they got all this cash just laying around because guess what they did? That's right. They raised prices. They raised prices on you. They raised prices on me. And but I know, Rick, Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden. All this inflation, it's Joe Biden. Joe Biden. Never mind the monster behind the curtain. Forget about the elephant in the room. Forget about corporate America lining their pockets. It's all Joe Biden. It's all his fault. Keep buying that.
There were multiple errors, miscalculations, and just a total lack of resources by the U.S. Forest Service.
New Mexico's largest ever wildfire caused by a prescribed burn. Japan's electric grid strains under historic extreme heat wave. Plus,
about 3/4 of U.S. adults have experienced extreme weather in the last 5 years.
And for many of them, extreme weather events are disastrous for long-term finances.
All of those disasters and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I made the point that Jeff Clark is not even competent to serve as the Attorney General. He's never been a criminal attorney. He's never conducted a criminal investigation in his life. And he kind of retorted by saying, well, I've done a lot of very complicated appeals and environmental litigation. And I said, that's right, you're an environmental lawyer. How about you go back to your office and we'll call you when there's an oil spill.
Oh, environmental lawyer slam. Well, it's Jeff Clark. Actually, he was an anti-environmental lawyer, so go get him. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, you think enough people are watching the January 6 hearings to know that Jeff Clark was the guy that Donald Trump was trying to put into the top of the Department of Justice to help him steal the election?
Well, if they didn't, they do now.
They do now. What do you got for us today?
Well, first, in Japan, officials are urging millions of residents to conserve electricity as an historic and dangerous heat wave strains the electric grid. A persistent heat wave gripping Northeast Asia set a new national record for Japan for the month of June at 104 degrees, and 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, the town of Norilsk, Russia, hit a record 90 degrees. Globally, multiple June heat waves have set monthly and all-time high temperature records in the U.S., Europe, Asia, and the Russian Arctic, and it's not even July yet, which is typically the hottest month in the Northern Hemisphere. All of this matters because increasingly severe, frequent, and long-lasting heat waves are a clear manifestation of human-caused global warming.
And this is a very cruel summer so far.
Here in the U.S., a new report by the U.S. Forest Service concludes that the agency's mistakes during a controlled burn to reduce the threat of wildfires were responsible for causing New Mexico's ongoing Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon Complex fire.
Oops.
The largest wildfire in the state's history. The report found that the agency used outdated modeling that underestimated climate change-intensified drought and heat. Plus, it found chronic understaffing made worse by government shutdowns, and the pandemic created a years-long backlog in forest clearing projects that put pressure on crews to catch up. Forest Service Chief Randy Moore said man-made climate change has narrowed the window for prescribed burns, and it is causing more intense and frequent wildfires, creating, quote, conditions on the ground that we have never encountered. Fires are outpacing our models.
Not good.
A different study underscores how climate change is dangerous, widespread, and costly. It finds that more than 70% of American adults say they have been directly affected by extreme weather events like hurricanes, wildfires, floods, and heat waves over the last 5 years. And for many, it was financially devastating. The new nationwide survey conducted by Harvard University and National Public Radio found many weather disaster victims suffered long-term financial problems, in part because most disaster victims do not receive federal emergency funding.
Well, the important thing is that it doesn't cost the fossil fuel companies anything. They're doing just fine.
Here's NPR reporter Rebecca Hersher.
About a fifth of people who experience floods, they had long-term financial problems. And as far as health goes, about a third of the people who were affected by wildfires said that they had serious problems, mostly because of smoke in the air. People who are already marginalized in our society, they are more likely to suffer long-term financial impacts, long-term health impacts after a weather disaster.
Good reporting from NPR there.
And it's probably not a surprise that the survey found that people who have experienced extreme weather are more concerned about climate change and support climate policies.
Go figure.
But some good news. A federal environmental assessment has determined that hard rock mining in the Minnesota wilderness is an exceptionally bad idea that would risk contaminating the region's water. The U.S. Forest Service assessment found that proposed copper and nickel mining would pose a major risk to the region's famous Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness. The draft assessment proposes a 20-year ban on copper mining on federal lands in the watershed, and it comes 6 months after the Biden Interior Department canceled 2 mining leases in the area granted by the Trump administration. administration.
Good for the Biden administration.
Finally, voters in Colombia, in South America, have elected their first leftist president, an economist and former guerrilla fighter named Gustavo Petro, who campaigned on a platform of reorganizing Colombia's economy to combat climate change and end its dependence on fossil fuels. Petro has pledged to phase out new fossil fuel production.
The ironically named Petro.
Indeed.
For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the good folks at Common Cause Georgia, they're calling on Marjorie Trainwreck Greene to resign. And, you know, how many organizations have called on her to resign? With all the craziness that you know, the whole, hey, we need greenhouse gas because it makes things greener, because it's green. We need carbon dioxide because it makes stuff greener. Again, I go back to, I think Democrats made a strategic error in kicking her off of the Education Committee. You need that kind of stupid on the Education Committee so that anytime you go, hey, we need more education funding, you could point to her and go, Exhibit A. Do you want your children to be like this? But look, they're calling on her to resign, and you might as well throw in the rest of them that sought pardons. My Congressman Scott Perry, Andy Biggs of Arizona, Mo Brooks of Alabama, Matt Gaetz, who just wanted a pardon for his whole family tree. Not anything he had to do with January 6th. Just wanted his whole tree pardoned. Also, Louis Gogo Gohmert and, of course, Marjorie, 3 names. And here to share some thoughts on why they sought to have her and now asked her to resign. I guess why now? I've asked Stephen Spalding to come talk with us. Stephen is the Senior Counsel for Public Policy and Government Affairs at Common Cause. Check out their website, commoncause.org. We'll get links out on social media. Stephen, thanks for taking some time for us.
Hey, good to see you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So why now? Why are we calling for the Marjorie Trainwreck to resign now?
Well, we actually called on members who voted to overturn the election way back on January 6th, 2021. We called on them to resign then because they were doing their best to throw out a free and fair election when a record number of voters showed up in the middle of a pandemic to choose new leadership. So we called on her as part of that. She was one of those members, 147 or so congressional Republicans have voted to throw out the election results. But, you know, why a number of our state organizations have called for various members to take the next, to do this again, to make this call again, is because of the testimony that we heard, the sworn testimony evidence out of the January 6th committee from members of Trump's own orbit, from his own White House, his officials who have gone on the record under oath that members of Congress after January 6th were asking for preemptive pardons, asking for pardons for, draw the inference. They made the call after after the insurrection on January 6th. So it's clear that when it comes to holding a position of public trust, that these folks have debased that, and it's time for them to step out of Congress.
Yeah, the fact that
I'd say this is, yeah, go ahead.
No, the fact that you had these people coming out and asking for pardons tells me they knew what they were doing at the time. They knew what they were doing was wrong, and they thought they might be able to get away with it. And they had hoped that in the aftermath, if they didn't, that he would bail them out. And to his credit, and I'm going to give Donald Trump credit here, to his credit, screw them. No pardons for them. Let them swing in the wind. I'm okay with that.
You know, they also could have. Who knows what they've also. I mean, I've seen some of the explanations and justifications, which we can let them speak for themselves. But at the same time, I mean, you just have to look at what the committee has laid out. I mean, we know there was this meeting apparently on December 21st, 2020 at the White House where a number of members of Congress were liaising and discussing what was going to happen on January 6th. We have the Eastman memo. And this committee is not done with their work yet. So they are putting out everything that they've learned in a very clear, dispassionate way, and letting the words speak for themselves. I mean, I think that the number of, just the way it's been presented, it's been this watershed moment of hearings where you have these witnesses that have come forward and testify at the table, but then spliced within that, all of the comments that they've made, all of the depositions. This committee is held, I think they've deposed or done interviews with more than 1,000 witnesses, collected hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, and they laid it out. And there's still a few more to go. Chairman Thompson said, Benny Thompson of Mississippi, who's chairing the committee, has said there will be further hearings in July. Who knows if we'll see another surprise hearing like we saw this week with Cassidy Hutchinson, who was the person on record talking about the pardons. Yeah. But lots for these members to explain to their constituents.
No, I got to tell you, in watching these, my expectations were very low. I'm going, oh great, more congressional hearings. These have been powerhouse. These have been dropping, spellbinding. My 13-year-old daughter was actually listening while we were driving in the car the other day. It actually was able to hold her attention. And you smirk, but that's
no, it's not a smirk. It's not a smirk. It's a smile.
No, that's a pretty impressive thing. And at one point, she looked at me. She goes, "Did the former president really want to hang his vice president?" And I go, "That's what the woman said."
Yeah, and she said that the president said he, quote, deserved it, unquote. I mean, I was in DC at the time, and just where I live and work, and the night of January 5th, walking around, there was something in the air. There were a number of people here that I had never seen before in my neighborhood, and it was a very eerie couple of day, and then we saw, of course, what happened on the 6th, and I think there's been this period after the 6th where people kind of have moved on from maybe how they felt on the morning of January 7th when they woke up and saw what really just happened. I mean, people died that day and subsequently, and I think these hearings have brought back into really stark relief how close we came to really losing everything. I mean, what they've laid out is how the president laid the groundwork for losing the election by calling it fraud, which was totally bogus, pursuing his legal theories by going to court, which is what you do if you're a candidate and you actually have any evidence. You go to court and you challenge it. He was involved in something like 60, I think there were 60 some suits of Trump allies. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of cases. They were all thrown out. So then he said, all right, if the judicial system doesn't work, what's option B? Option B is I'm going to pressure state and local officials. I'm going to call the Secretary of State of Georgia and say, find me the 11,780 votes, which is one more than I need to win the state. I'm going to pressure the vice president with this bogus Leary theory from John Eastman, the lawyer who was putting forward this bogus theory that the vice president can somehow set aside the votes. By the way, the DOJ just executed a search warrant apparently against some of his property. And when that didn't work, it was let's summon a mob to Washington, D.C., apparently knowingly that they were armed with AR-15s down at the ellipse, said, get rid of the magnetometers. Those people aren't here to hurt me. Who were they there to hurt? Then he directs them and points them to the Capitol. And I think that's what we're going to hear in the next couple of hearings. I anticipate is we're going to hear more about the actual direction of the president and the organizing that went into what they did to sack the Capitol, and not just attack the Capitol. And I made this point again, like not just to attack the building, as heinous as that was, and the members and the staff and law enforcement that are there, but also to attack the election itself.
Yeah, and to actually get into the place where the ballots were being counted. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Stephen Spalding, Senior Counsel for Public Policy and Government Affairs for Common Cause, commoncause.org, the website. Check that out. Lots of good information there. Lots of thoughts on this January 6th committee hearings. I want to get, in looking at this is, again, as I've been saying, my expectations were very low. I think they've just, knocked it out of the park one after the other and focused it on Trump and his part of this. I would like to see it expanded even further. And I said on January 6th, that night when I came on the air, I go, yeah, I want to make sure we grab all the people who defecated on the floor and urinated on desks and broke windows and did all of the horrible things that they did that day. And I absolutely want Trump accountable and everybody who did this. But I want the dark moneyed interests who funded this stuff, the people, the machinery that allowed this to happen, that made this stuff possible. I don't know that we've heard enough about that yet. The mechanisms behind all of this that made Trump possible, that made MAGA world possible. Do you think we get to that?
That's a really, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, that is within, I think, the charge of the select committee is to get to the causes and the sources of that. And that has to be part of the story. I mean, the people who arrived on January 6th and the lead up to January 6th and just the staging, the Save America staging and all of that. I mean, people didn't just show up unannounced. They were organized. Who paid for them to come to DC? Who paid for the clear communications that they were all in to, figure out a way to breach the Capitol? I mean, this was like a well-coordinated operation, and we do deserve answers as to who paid for that, and that has to, I do hope that comes out. I mean, I think the committee will have several more hearings, and we're hearing, from what's been reported, the next ones will be focusing on the 6th and actually the summoning of the mob and the pointing of the mob to DC, and who paid for that has got to be a part of it. And then eventually there will be that report that comes out later in September.
Yeah, maybe we get to hear about Benito, how the Republican gubernatorial candidate here in Pennsylvania, Benito Mastriano, brought his busloads of folks. I mean, Doug Mastriano brought his throngs of supporters down and how he was there. And I'd like to know how far he went into the illegal part of all of this, considering we may have him as a governor in this state at some point. It'd be nice to know how deep our future governor could be in all this before we go into election time. So I guess, I also want to know, you as a lawyer in looking at this, because I think a lot of people want to know, ultimately, out of all of this, will there be accountability? Is Merrick Garland watching? I know those are questions that you can't answer, but is it possible that we may, for the first time in any of our lifetimes, hold an administration accountable? Is it possible that a president could be held accountable, or does this fall further down the thing? Because I think Eastman's going to get something. I think Giuliani's something's got to come. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, and he is a former president, so he is a private citizen right now, and there is this case in Fulton County, Georgia, where the DA there has convened a grand jury to look at violations of the state law in Georgia that prohibits the solicitation of essentially election fraud. And when he called the Secretary of State and said, "Find me the votes," he knew what he was doing was illegal, and he knew that it was unlawful to. And he knew he lost the election, and that he was, threatening on that call. I worked, before I went to law school, I did some work as an assistant on a number of racketeering investigations and organized crime investigations in New York City. And that call sounded exactly like the types of calls that were involved in the organized crime mob cases that I dealt with. Yeah. As for ultimately accountability, I mean, Eastman, there's the search warrant. There's the search warrant that apparently was executed against Jeffrey Clark, who was the AG that Trump wanted to maybe try to install until a bunch of people at DOJ threatened a mass resignation. And then we have the opinion. There was a legal opinion from a federal judge in California, who wrote an opinion that said the illegality of this plan was obvious. This was a coup in search of a legal theory, and that more likely than not, the president broke the law, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. And that was a lawsuit between Eastman and the January 6th Select Committee over documents. But clearly that federal judge, put that on the record. That's a federal case. You would hope and assume that the Justice Department and the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, are taking notice of all of this.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think the case is so profound and so strong when they put this report out that they're going to have no other option than to really wrestle this to the ground.
Yeah, you brought up Jeffrey Clark's name, and I don't think there's a more hated person than Jeffrey Clark in government. Maybe Ted Cruz, I don't know, but to listen to those people talk about Jeffrey Clark, wow, right to his face was one of those things you go, quite amazing. But you brought up the mob calls, and Liz Cheney did talk about this, that a number of the witnesses had been threatened. And I've always said that Trump kind of fashioned himself as, I believed, as kind of a mob don, having, had one of his mentors being Roy Cohn. So, I'm not surprised by any of that.
Yeah, no, it just continues. And the statements, you just brought them up at the end of the last hearing. Vice Chair Cheney put up the statements that some witnesses had received about being on the team and saying the right things. And don't you know that Donald Trump reads every word of the transcripts? I mean, the implicit threats sure seem to me like it's bordering on raising questions about witness tampering. So I think the service of this committee has been just laying it all out so crisply and clearly and concisely that it's going to have to lead to, people are not just going to walk away and throw up their hands and say, so now what? It has to lead to accountability. I think they're really building that case. So
last question I got for you. What you as a lawyer, what charges would you be looking for if something does come? What are we talking about? Obstruction of justice, obstruction of government, operations. What?
I'm going to be a lawyer and say I don't have. I want to take the time to explore every single one of those. Every single crime. Certainly obstruction of a lawful proceeding of Congress. We've already heard about a judge saying conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to solicit election fraud. There's a great resource on Just Security, which is a law blog that actually Norm Eisen, who was the former White House ethics counsel under President Obama, and Fred Wertheimer of Democracy 21 have been tracking. They have a criminal legal tracker. And you can go up there and see a chart. And every time new evidence comes out of the committee, they point to crimes and who committed them and when and what the elements of those crimes are. It's on the Just Security website. And the work of those folks and those people with serious criminal law experience have been making that case. And you can go to that website and see all those.
No, it's incredible
analysis.
It's incredible stuff there. You're absolutely right. And I hope folks will check it out. But Stephen, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Great work. I appreciate you coming on and giving us some of your thoughts.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Again, check out their website, commoncause.org. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Should there be charges? Should someone be held accountable for the criming? I think so. Back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So at least something good came out of the Supreme Court today. Can't believe those words came out of my mouth. Something positive, I guess. They decided not to take a case. They declined to take a case seeking to overturn the California law on worker misclassification. They let stand AB 5 there in California, which means that the petition by the California Trucking Association, not going anywhere, which means that those port truck drivers, they're going to be considered hopefully employees at some point instead of their own boss. And again, this is one of those moments where, look, I'm not against people putting out their shingle. I'm not against them working hard and wanting to do their own thing. But having spent as much time in the trucking industry as I have, most people just want to have a job. They didn't want to start their own trucking company, and they certainly didn't want to be in a position where they're really an employee with all of the rights of no one. They take on all the risk, they take on all of the headaches, they take on all of the troubles, and get very little of the reward. And this is, in my view, what the gig economy has gotten us. Look, I know people who do sideline work. I know people who are contractors. They're truly their own boss. They pick and choose when they want to work, who they work for, what they do, and that's truly what an independent contractor is. But when you work for a company that says, hey, you be here at this time, you wear this uniform, you take this to this place, and you be here when I tell you, how I tell you to get there, all of that stuff, are you really your own boss? And the answer clearly is no. And what's happened over the years is we've allowed, because of broken, antiquated laws, we've allowed these really smart people at the top to manipulate our broken laws and take advantage of people who need work. So they take advantage of desperation. And that's how a lot of this keeps popping up. And there are some people who does gig work for some people? Yeah, it does for some. For the vast majority, I would argue no. In fact, I've talked to a lot of people who are Lyft drivers and Uber drivers. They go, yeah, sometimes I like it, but most of the time I'm getting to the short end of the stick. I had one guy explain it to me the best way. He goes, I'm in this because it's a great tax dodge. That's all it really is. I don't make a lot of money from what I do. I'm able to deduct a lot of things. So when it works out because I'm, as a small business owner, because that's what I really kind of am, I'm able to take advantage of the tax codes, and it's really a tax ripoff. Once they figure this out and they take this stuff away, then that changes the calculus. And he was not wrong. This is a moment, and look, good on the court for not taking this up. This is a moment where, as a country, we really need to pass laws to protect workers. We really need to decide what kind of an economy we're going to have. Do we have an economy based on who's willing to slit each other's throats for pennies, who's willing to work for less, who's willing to skirt laws, who's willing to violate this, that, or the other thing? Or do we take the higher road, as past generations have done, and make better opportunities? This, for me, is part of that. So I'm actually fairly surprised that the court turned this down, because I would think that this is in their ideological wheelhouse. I would be curious to look at why they turned it down. But what's happened over the years, the reason that you've taken the trucking industry, which was the gold standard of the American middle class for a couple of generations, and turned it back into sweatshop on wheels, is because of this independent contractor stuff. It's because they've been able to shift responsibility from the corporation onto the individual. And there's got to be some pushback on that. So we'll see. We'll see where this decision takes us. And again, I'm hoping this pushback against this independent contractor, this gig economy stuff happens. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you work a gig economy job? Do you like it? Do you think it's something we should pursue as a matter of policy, or are there flaws? I would like to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you know. Love to hear it. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people on the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1885. That was the day that streetcar workers went out on strike. The West Division Street Railroad Company had reduced the number of trips it made each day. The workers asked for a wage increase to make up for the loss of earnings. In response, management fired 15 union leaders. Outraged members of the city's labor movement rallied to the cause of the West Side Streetcarmen's Benevolent Association. Thousands of Chicagoans lined the company's tracks. Calls went out to revoke the company's charter. Mayor Harrison urged the company not to try and run their cars in the charged environment. But the company's management refused to listen. They demanded police protection to get their streetcars running. A police captain by the name of John Bonfield was assigned the task. Bristling with policemen, 10 streetcars rolled out into the crowd. Under Bonfield's orders, the police clubbed strikers and protesters along the tracks. When a group of bricklayers yelled "rats" at the passing cars, they were arrested. In all, 150 protesters went to jail that day. After 7 days, the strike ended in a compromise. The workers saw an increase in their wages, and all but 2 of the workers who had been fired got their jobs back. The action propelled Captain Bonfield's career as a strikebreaker. He became known as Captain Blackjack Bonfield. It was Captain Bonfield who led the police confrontation with workers at a rally the next year that sparked the Haymarket tragedy. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Too many big business CEOs turn out to be grifters, ripping off consumers, workers, and others. But the corporate con artists I consider most vile are those who profiteer on people's health care needs. We've had such infamous high-profile scammers as Medicare fraudster Rick Scott, Big Pharma price gouger Martin Shkreli, and the Sackler family of opioid pushers. Worse, though, we now face an industry-wide epidemic of insurers, hospitals, and others that are pushing higher costs onto patients, then systematically pushing those who can't pay the full inflated tab into debt schemes. With bloated interest charges, payments go on for years, and medical bankruptcies are soaring. The most significant statistic in today's avaricious world of healthcare finance is this: half of U.S. adults don't have the money to cover a $500 medical bill. Thus, as the system keeps jacking up its prices and profits, millions of families are forced by illness or injury into the dark valley of debt, inhabited by ruthless debt collectors employed by the medical establishment. But wait, you say, I have health insurance. Still, ever-increasing prices and out-of-pocket insurance requirements put you into debt, too. A recent Kaiser Family Foundation survey found that 6 out of 10 working-class adults with health coverage went into medical debt in the past 5 years. Most perversely, healthcare debt prevents many people from getting health care. 1 in 7 Americans say the corporate system has refused care to them because they have unpaid medical bills, and 2/3 say they've put off care because of the fear of crushing debt. As one expert puts it, the number 1 reason and the number 2 and 3 and 4 reasons that people go into medical debt is that they don't have the money. It's not complicated. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help stop healthcare industry's profiteers, go to ripmedicaldebt.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, as expected, the 6 in robes came out with another bad decision. This time, West Virginia versus the Environmental Protection Agency. And look, no surprise here. We talked about this before. Fully expected the corporate court to go in this direction. I did find Justice Elena Kagan's, her writings interesting. She said that the court appoints itself instead of Congress or expert agency, the decision maker on climate policy. She says, I cannot think of many things more frightening. She also said that they don't have a clue. don't have a clue on how to address climate change. And again, the folks in the robes, they know better. But evidently, look, my thought process went, they evidently have a direct line, since we have now a theocratic court, must have a direct line to a higher power. And look, carbon dioxide's a good thing. If you listen to the Marjorie Three Names, greenhouse gas is great because it makes things green. Makes things green. Oh my gosh. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on how horrible this is going to be, and well, do the folks in the dresses know what they're doing? I've asked our good friend Mike Williams to come talk with us. He's a senior fellow for energy and environmental policy there at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, their website. Mike, thanks for taking time for us.
Always great to be here, Rick. And I completely agree with Justice Kagan. There are few things, if any, more frightening than the six justices deciding that they know better on climate change, or for that matter, reproductive rights, or for that matter, gun safety, or for that matter, democracy. Oh my God, this has been a rough few weeks. But yeah, today, cherry on top, right?
Yeah, not just a rough few weeks. I mean, this has been years in the making. Look, I mean, this court has been marching towards insanity for a while. You go back to the decisions that, money is speech, corporations are people, public sector workers are all no rights at work. I mean, we can go through a whole bunch of really bad decisions. They're going to accelerate now that they've got a super majority. And it's going to get much worse now that they've gotten even further to the right and further to the extreme and further to the zealotry class. But yeah, this is that march towards, well, horrible.
Yes, make no mistake, this is a MAGA majority on the court. This is the extremist MAGA Republicans deciding to wrest control of the Supreme Court, as they did state houses, the United States Senate, the House of Representatives, and the presidency previously, which thankfully has been pulled back a little bit, but they succeeded in wresting control. The MAGA extremists took control of the Supreme Court. And this is the first year that all three of the Trump appointees have ruled on cases. And look at what's happened. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And it's what they're doing, what they know, well, what couldn't be done legislatively because it's deeply unpopular. Fighting climate change, supporting reproductive rights, gun safety are all very popular things. And they know that. And so they're using these ways to do an end around to get their MAGA extremist ideas through.
Yeah, but they've been honest about this. And I remember in 2016, in line handing out literature in a very conservative area, and the people in that line knew why they were voting for Trump. They were voting for this. They were voting for the Supreme Court. They were voting for, justices who were going to do this stuff. So for MAGA world, this is what they want. And the rest of us, I don't think we're listening enough, especially all those people who stayed home, or, hey, how bad can it get? Well, we're going to find out, because they're rewriting the 20th century.
What her emails, Rick? What her emails, right? What her emails. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so now, just today, and I'm sure you've gone over the Dobbs case, which is gut-wrenching still to this day. But today, the West Virginia versus EPA case is an absolute gift to the fossil fuel industry. It's a gift. It is directly limiting the EPA's ability to regulate carbon pollution, which is, the Environmental Protection Agency conceivably should be able to limit pollution, right? According to this EPA and according to the MAGA folks on the court, no, it's not. It's not. We have to greatly limit that to specific ways to do it. Otherwise, you might come across what's called the major questions doctrine. And for them, they think that, the administrative state, the federal government, shouldn't be able to make determinations on laws. They have to follow the direct words that are there, even though things were written years ago. And Congress, in its good judgment, in a number of places, decided to give the administrative state, the federal government, latitude. Because guess what, Rick? Things evolve, things change, time goes on. And that's why these things are built in. But this court says, no, absolutely not.
No, and
you mentioned Justice Kagan. Her dissent is phenomenal, and I really encourage a lot of people to read it. There's a couple amazing quotes in there. So here's one: the limits the majority now puts on the EPA's authority fly in the face of the statute Congress wrote. As I already explained, she wrote, nothing in the Clean Air Act, or for that matter, any other statute, conflicts with the EPA's reading of Section 111, which is what this court decided to greatly limit, if not completely demolish today. Nothing in statute said that that conflicted with this, and the majority didn't dispute that point. They didn't dispute it. They had to just find a way around to take it out.
So since you brought up the Clean Water Act and you throw the Clean Air Act and throw that all in there, given this decision now, could we pass something like that? Because I grew up in the 70s, the era of hyper pollution. I suffered from asthma horribly as a kid because the pollution in Cleveland at the time. And I remember we used to have a pollution index on the news every night because, hey, kids, don't go outside because it's really bad. We used to have acid rain because of the lead in the gasoline and all kinds of horrible things that we passed laws, and the EPA, the smart people the scientists that study this stuff, made choices, and we did this stuff. Is it, am I getting this right, that because of this decision, maybe we don't get to ever do that stuff again?
So here's the gridlock. And again, this is apparently the MAGA extremist game plan, Rick. You make it so we gerrymander the United States House of Representatives. You make it so you make voting really hard, and you have undemocratic things like the filibuster. So passing legislation that's of any major consequence is near impossible. And then from there, to make sure that nothing can happen, you make it so that the federal government can't do anything. So yes, Rick, this is all terrible. This is terrible. I don't know if we could pass the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act today. Wait, I do know. No, we couldn't, because the United States Senate is undemocratic. There are 50 Democrats, but you need 60 votes to pass anything. And the Republican Party has decided that climate change, the MAGA extremists in the Republican Party have decided that climate change is not of their concern and not something we need to deal with. And so things like, what was Build Back Better, or just these big investment packages are too much for them.
Today I saw headlines, Supreme Court stops Biden's agenda. Was this Biden's agenda? I mean, this stuff started during, actually there's nothing here. I mean, these were proposals during the Obama years, as I remember, that never actually went into effect. But the headlines, court stops Biden agenda, and I'm going, explain that. You're the smart guy. What the heck is that?
So, yes, some clarity there. This case came as a result, again, of extremist attorney generals, specifically one in West Virginia and joined by a couple other extremist attorney generals, suing an Obama-era rule called the Clean Power Plan. It was stayed by the Supreme Court a number of years ago during Trump. The Trump EPA pulled it back, said, no way we're going to do that. Of course the Trump EPA would do that, right? But then President Biden was elected. His EPA came into power, and there's been no indication that they were going to bring this back. In fact, they publicly said the Clean Power Plan is not coming back. This construct is not something we're going to do. So what the court could have done, which would have been conceivably responsible, is say, this is moot. This question is moot. There's no action happening. But they decided, again, an extremist tactic, to say, no, we have this opportunity now to further hinder what the EPA can do, what the EPA can do going forward. Because maybe just in case, they might try to make our lives better, make our air cleaner, our water cleaner. But no, we're going to make this ruling and say that this is something we're going to push back on. So to your question, is this Biden's agenda? President Biden has a really strong agenda, an investment agenda on dealing with the climate crisis. He has noted an agenda, and Administrator Regan at the EPA has an agenda on making sure that we have clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and to deal with the climate crisis, because they have the authority to do that under a 2007 Supreme Court case. but there hasn't been a explicit agenda through the EPA that this court was ruling on today. So those headlines are a bit not right.
So you said there's a 2007 case, so that would be kind of precedence. But this court doesn't believe in any of that, so it's the Wild West. So new things could happen tomorrow, if I'm reading this court right. Also, this case to me kind of signals to corporate America that we're saying that government can't regulate anything. Just bring a case and the Supreme Court will shoot down regulation. Because this is kind of what the big picture, the big story for me is. Yeah, there was this one part of it, but the bigger picture is, can we, the people, regulate corporate America? Can we regulate the polluters and the wealth class of this country? And so for me, the bigger picture here is, no, we, the people, have no control over the moneyed interests.
It is the scariest point of all of this, that exact piece, Rick. It's terrible that the court, the MAGA extremists on the court, and I'm just going to keep saying that, by the way, because it's true, limited the EPA's authority to regulate. But what they also did by taking this case on, again, they could have just said this discussion is moot. The EPA is not doing this. You brought this lawsuit when they were. It stopped. Go back. It's done. But instead, they decided to take this case and start picking at the major questions doctrine. And specifically, they make it so that they have now opened the door so that lawyers in any industry, for big multinational corporations, can hire lawyers to go into any regulation, say, we think that statute, this part in the statute which costs us money, but maybe makes workers safer here or makes products safer there. It's long extant but rarely used, using Chief Justice's words, or it's granting unheralded power. For those, this is radio, I'm air quoting those phrases. Then they can sue and say, you know what? This is unheralded power. Get rid of it. Make it so that there can't be that regulation to make workers safer, because it's not explicitly in the law or as originally written. The federal government gave itself unheralded power. This is the first time this has happened, Rick. And yes, it is giving corporations, multinational corporations, lawyers, it's giving them unheralded power to start to dismantle administrative protections, consumer protections, worker protections, environmental protections.
Yeah, this is as big a deal as the Dobbs case was in overturning Roe, and I've been saying this, and I've taken some arrows for it. And it's huge. It's enormous. The overturning Roe is, a fundamental change in human rights and horrible and all of that. This, I fear, flies under the radar and is equally, in my view, as bad because, this is humanity. This is, our ability to ensure that we're going to be able to do anything to make our conditions better. They're just, slamming the door on this. Now, let me pose that as a question. Is that being hyperbolic? Because I don't want to be viewed as, oh my God, Rick, you're claiming that the world's on fire. It's just one decision. It's not a big deal. We can undo this. Am I being hyperbolic on this?
You're not being hyperbolic, which hurts me to say. I do think that the straw man where somebody said we can undo it, I think that's true, but that requires people stepping up and saying, no more to the MAGA extremists. No more. No more. There are social norms. There are good governance norms that we've abided by for decades that is finally crumbling in front of our eyes. And I say finally, not because I've been fighting against this my whole career, but the extremists have been fighting for this for decades. Like super right-wing organizations have been fighting for these moments for decades.
Yeah, huge amounts of money going into this. You're still right. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Mike Williams, Senior Fellow for Energy and Environmental Policy at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org, the website. Make sure you check out the work that he does there. This is one of those things that I don't know that a lot of people really get, is how much money and how much secret and dark money go into these groups that have been working on these these horrible ideas and these lawsuits and all of this stuff for decades to get to this place that they are now, whether it's on overturning Roe, whether it's destroying our environment, whether it's destroying workers' rights, whether it's destroying consumer rights, go down the list. There is a right-wing organization out there that is heavily funded with the smartest people probably on the planet working to do the most evil. And I don't think most people understand how vast this network is and how much power and control that they actually have. But they're going to, because if you look at the decisions that have come out of our six in robes, they're calling for more. You look at Justice Thomas, claiming in the Dobbs thing, hey, all that other stuff could be on the table too. So crazy people, bring us those cases. So do you expect more of this stuff to accelerate, more of the angry, more of the horrible, more of the repeal of the 20th century, and fast? Because, well, hopefully democracy, rises up. People get the pitchfork. Something. What do you expect going forward? I guess.
Yes, sadly, yes. Justice Thomas was very clear in the Dobbs case. They are not stopping. They see these as the first steps towards further unraveling the rights and protections, the civil rights, reproductive rights, democratic rights, environmental protections, worker protections, anything that they can start to unravel, they will unravel. There's going to be a Clean Water Act case probably next year. There's going to be core cases that are core to democratic reforms, small d democratic, for elections and how elections are governed through giving potentially state legislatures, again, unheralded power. How horrifying would that be?
Yeah,
if state legislatures had that over elections. So yeah, Rick, this is not stopping. This court's not stopping. Trump and the MAGA extremists won. They put 3 of their people on the court. This is the first term that we've seen all 3 of them there, and they have a supermajority right now. So we can either sit back and hope that maybe 1 or 2 of them will be like, well, that's a little too much. I'll be conservative, but not that conservative or not that extremist. But that's a ridiculous thing, Rick. So what we need to do is organize, vote, call, and really get involved in advocacy and democracy. Stand up. This is the only way this changes. In November, a wave doesn't happen one way. That has to be the case. This has to be a wake-up call for people who normally would be like, you know what, midterm, I'm annoyed about this or that.
Gas prices. Everyone's going to be mad about gas prices. And look, that could be the last election you get to vote in. That's going to matter. I mean, I look at the fact that they took that Moore case in North Carolina, and that's directed at North Carolina and my state of Pennsylvania.
Correct.
It's
what happened if our legislature had decision-making power over elections?
Absolutely. No, bad stuff. But Mike, I appreciate the time. This is not great. I'm looking forward to having you coming back and explain just how bad it's going to be as it happens. But thanks for your time, man.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it.
Mike Williams, Senior Fellow there at the Center for American Progress. Seriously, this is not good stuff. Not good stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break, wrap things up after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. The original intentists. Now remember, the folks, they're going to tell you, if it's not explicitly written in the Constitution, it doesn't exist. I go back to when I was a kid. The lead in the gasoline caused all kinds of environmental problems. And by having the EPA regulate that out, well, we cleaned up the environment a little bit. Kids stop eating paint chips. IQs hopefully have gone back up a little bit. We dealt with acid rain. Anybody remember acid rain? I seem to remember that as a kid. It was bad. The smog we used to have, the horrible pollution problems we used to have. Yeah, it's easy to forget. And this is what conservative zealot world wants you to forget. They know people die off and don't pass along how bad things used to be, and how advancements in policy and legislation and people, fighting in the past to make things better for future generations, what those fights were like. Here we are. We've rolled back protections for women. We've moved women back 150 years. My daughters are going to have less opportunities than their mothers did. Well, how's that going to happen? Watch. But this is what they want. They want the power and control in the hands of a few. Now remember, the original intentist will be very clear in telling you they only believe what was originally written in the Constitution, originally enumerated right there in writing. White men, landowners over 21 being able to vote. That's it. None of you rabble, none of you women, none of you minorities, none of you. White landowning males over 21. That's the world. And that's what these folks believe. So are you surprised when there are a bunch of people who are okay with the horrible? And this is the weird thing. All of these bad decisions keep coming down, and MAGA world is just happy. I had someone tell me, "See, it's just going to make you libs all upset. This is going to make you libs mad." No, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at you. You didn't do anything. You're not this smart. You didn't do this. You were manipulated. I get it. You were watching the F channel with your mouth open, doing your research on the can while scrolling through the F book. They got you, man. They focus group, think tank, approve everything. And you bought it hook, line, and sinker. And you're going to suffer as much as the rest of us. And this is where I'm hoping MAGA world goes, well, at least some of the sane and rational. Now, look, there's the fives, you're never getting anywhere near the true believers, the Kool-Aid drinkers, until it does affect them. And look, I look at that testimony of that Cassidy Hutchinson. She was a 5. She was a true believer until, reality set in. There's going to be a moment. And it's coming for you, MAGA world. There's going to be a moment. There's going to be an epiphany where you're going to realize that everything you supported has made our country worse. Everything that the only reason you supported, we're going to make those libtards cry. It's going to hurt you and your family too. And I take no solace in that. I take no happiness in that. That's the difference between liberals and conservatives. I want a better future. I want a better place for my kids, for my family, for your families. I want better opportunities. This court is rolling us back in all the worst ways. There's no policy here. There's no, because I have people saying, well, but Rick, we'll just codify Roe into law. Well, do you think this court's not going to overturn it? Hello? This is why elections matter, and this one's important. This one's important. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Angry, hateful emails to the top of the line. I do generally enjoy those the most, especially the ones that are misspelled and poorly written. Please, by all means, keep sending those. But again, I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for taking time. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.